You're listening to a CNA podcast. Elon Musk, electric vehicle and space visionary, world's richest person, and most recently, first buddy of United States President Donald Trump. He's a man with many projects on his plate, but right now, there's one thing he's really focused on.
The Department of Government Efficiency is going to be great. You know, what that's going to do is really just take a look at all the federal expenditures. If you're not getting great value for money for your hard-earned tax dollars, cancel it. Yeah.
The Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, was set up on President Trump's first day in office. Its purpose, carry out spending cuts. Its leader, for all intents and purposes, Elon Musk. Reports say he and his DOGE team have access to at least 15 federal agencies. But the Tesla CEO is also efficient at getting his message out, calling himself a free speech absolutist. And armed with more than 200 million followers on social media, he's criticized government leaders in the UK and EU and encouraged right-wing political movements in some 18 countries, according to one estimate. I'm Teresa Tang. In America and beyond, Musk is influencing politics in a way we have never seen before. So just how powerful is he? Well, we're going to break it down this episode with correspondent Kate Fisher in Washington, D.C. and Trent Murray in Berlin, Germany. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Teresa.
Great to be with you.
Kate, you're based in Washington, D.C., and you've had a front row seat to Musk's political ascent. Can you tell me what has been the most surprising thing for you to witness? You know, how polarizing a figure is Musk in America?
He is incredibly polarizing. And in terms of surprising things, I can't decide whether it was when he was, wielding a chainsaw above his head at the Conservative Political Action Conference just recently here, or whether it was when he appeared in the Oval Office next to Donald Trump. As Donald Trump sat at his desk, he stood there with his toddler child on his shoulders and kind of just spoke for a long time as Donald Trump sat there basically mute. That was pretty surprising. And then the cabinet meeting, he is not an official member of the US cabinet, but he was there in the room and he essentially spoke for the whole meeting. And the cabinet secretaries who are Senate approved and meant to be giving their reports barely got a word in. So there are many ways that he has surprised me. But in terms of what people think of him, I've spoken to a lot of Americans about this and a lot of really ardent Trump supporters, including those who came here to Washington for the inauguration, spent their money to come and be here. So they really do love him. And every single one of those that I spoke to was really pleased that Elon Musk was really close to the president and so involved in running the government. They said things to me like, if you've got a genius willing to do this, why wouldn't you let him? Let's hear some of the other people, what they had to say.
I think that Trump surrounds himself with intelligent people that know what to do for specific tasks. And I think that's one of the things that I've appreciated about Donald Trump. He doesn't have to do it all himself. He doesn't have to be that person that solves everything. He surrounds himself with the correct people to get the job done.
About 6,700 kilometers away from the White House is Berlin. That is where you are, Trent. And Musk is no stranger to Germany, right? What sort of relationship did Musk have with Berlin before his push into politics began? Tell us.
Well, look, very much from his private sector background and around Tesla in particular, Elon Musk has had a long relationship with elected officials in Germany. He selected Berlin as the location for his first gigafactory in Europe, effectively a factory to build Tesla cars. And to try and get a project of that scale off the ground required a lot of political cooperation. It was very common to see Elon Musk having meetings and press calls with high-profile politicians in Germany. He eventually got that factory built. It is now operating. But then we started to see a shift from Musk in the past 6 months or so, where he's almost turning his back on a lot of those relationships now and really criticizing the country. He's set his targets on the Chancellor, Olaf Scholz. He set his targets on particular parties and policies, and it's all kind of culminated now in him fully backing a party known as the Alternative for Germany. This is a far-right party branded as extremist by many of its opponents. he has said that only that party can save Germany. And that has really shocked the German political establishment, because I think they always knew he was quite disruptive and was taking a bit of a different sort of approach to the world, given now his close relationship with the Trump administration. But to see him back a party which for many is really on the fringes and representing extremist views, it really caused a political earthquake in Germany.
Kate, in your report, you point out that Donald Trump won 77 million votes. Musk didn't win a single one. He's unelected. And that's a big issue, right? That he is unelected, yet appears to wield a lot of power in the White House. Critics, though, they say, look, Musk was very visible with Trump on the campaign trail, and essentially a vote for Trump was a vote for Musk in a way.
Absolutely. And as I said, the people who did vote for Trump, the ones I spoke to at the inauguration, fully endorsed him and were really happy that he is so close to the president they elected, even though they didn't actually vote for him. They saw it as an extra advantage to voting for Trump, that they also got what they see as kind of the power, money and genius of Elon Musk. And when I kind of challenged that and said, but what about the fact that he may make money out of his position, that you didn't elect him? They said, we don't mind, why wouldn't we make the most of this man who wants to help the US government? And also they said they didn't know a politician alive that didn't make money out of being close to government. They kind of accepted that as something that just happened. But I got very different vibes when I spoke to Democrats, who also every single Democrat I've spoken to is not a fan of Elon Musk being so close to the center of power. And they point, to, for example, to the tableau at the inauguration where Musk was right close to Trump in the ceremony of the inauguration, as well as Jeff Bezos of Amazon, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. And they talked about this kind of oligarchy of these incredibly rich, incredibly powerful tech billionaires essentially having the ear of the president. And it was really concerning to them, as well as all the work that Musk is doing with DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, where he's going into these government agencies, slashing budgets, laying people off. Concern from Democrats about that is what programs are going to be disappeared, but also, the kind of, are they accessing personal information and what it means for how the country will be run in the future. And there are serious concerns from Democrats, but obviously they are powerless to do anything right now, given the fact that Donald Trump is the elected president and he has chosen to put Elon Musk in this position. So there's also concern from critics of Musk about how much money he could potentially make out of his position at the center of power. I mean, he's literally got an office in the West Wing now next to Donald Trump. He already, according to a Washington Post investigation, his companies have already made $38 billion out of the US government, and that's before he got this office in the West Wing. SpaceX has got billions from NASA and the Department of Defense, but also Tesla has collected $11.4 billion, according to this Washington Post research. And now Elon Musk is actually in charge of cutting the budgets and deciding who works at these departments, who ultimately are giving his companies these contracts. And there is real concern that there's a conflict of interest here. And when reporters have asked the White House about this, they've said if Elon Musk comes across any conflict of interest in his work, he will decide to excuse himself from those contracts. And of course, many of his critics don't see that as an effective way of ensuring that he doesn't make money.
He's policing himself, really.
Absolutely. He's policing himself. There's no oversight of what he's doing. And on top of that, talking of oversight, there's also concern, particularly from safety advocates, that he is going to be dissolving or trying to advise Donald Trump and the federal government as a whole to dissolve things like safety initiatives and federal investigations into the safety of self-driving cars, which of course he has a huge interest in with his company Tesla. And he has found in the past that he's come up against these problems when his cars have been involved in accidents, and it's likely that he will be trying to use his influence to get those kind of federal oversight bodies to become less powerful, and that will help his company also make more money in the future. But safety activists have warned that the consequences of that could be truly dire. During my reporting, I was speaking to many analysts as well, and I spoke to Lucan Way, who is a distinguished professor of democracy at the University of Toronto in Canada. He co-wrote an article for Foreign Affairs magazine, which is a very kind of impactful foreign policy magazine here in the United States. And in that article, he asked whether the US was on a path to authoritarianism. And here's what he had to say about what Musk is doing.
So this, violates democracy at its core, right? That you cannot just have private individuals come in and ignore and violate laws with impunity and literally go into the most essential and kind of parts of the state, which is the payment system. Shocking almost seems like too mild a word.
Despite all that Musk has going on in America, he still has made the time to throw his support behind, as you just said, the Alternative for Germany Party, or AfD. And just before Christmas, in fact, he expressed his support on X, and the party's leader, Alice Weidel, has said she almost fell off her chair at his endorsement just ahead of the elections. So my question to you, Trent, is why? Why has Musk gotten involved in the country's domestic affairs? And also, what do Germans think of this?
Well, look, I think a lot of people were just genuinely shocked that he did get involved. I've attended several AfD rallies just as part of my reporting, and one of the things you pick up is a lot of the rhetoric is similar to what you hear in the United States on the Trump campaign. They talk about cracking down on illegal immigration and increasing deportations. They talk about opposing green energy and renewable energy because of the cost it adds to doing business. They talk about things like law and order, themes that are very similar to what Cade and those in the US would be familiar with. And so in many ways, the kind of political link, I think, to what they are trying to do and what Musk's kind of new worldview is based on his endorsement of the Trump administration just align. I spoke to one member of the European Parliament, Thomas Röhlich, who is a member of the AfD, and he effectively said that the endorsement has really put the wind in their sails. They're feeling emboldened, they're feeling energized. They really took it very, very happily. Let's have a listen to what he told me.
Elon Musk's endorsement is an incredible gain, an incredible boost for our image, because Elon Musk is one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world. On the one hand, it was a big surprise for me, but on the other hand, Elon Musk has made a lot of statements in the past that show political and philosophical alignment with the AfD.
So that was Thomas Röhlich there, member of the European Parliament for the AfD party, effectively confirming what many sources in the party have told me, which is he has really helped put the wind in the sails of the party. They often felt like that they were on the fringes, that they struggled to get media time, that their political opponents really shunned them and wouldn't work with them. And some of that is still true. But I think what Musk has helped them achieve is some really big headlines and almost a normalization across the German political scene, which is quite an unusual position for them to be in, just given how much their political opponents brand them as extremists. The other big thing we saw from Elon Musk, aside from the kind of written endorsements on X and the like, was he dialed in to their party convention and he actually gave a speech via video link. Alice Weidel had a smile from ear to ear. The crowd just gave rapturous applause. You could tell that this was a really big moment, I think, in German political history to see a party which, for many of their opponents, it has to be said, that considers their kind of origins and their ideology to being not dissimilar to some of the more extreme parties that we saw in the mid-20th century in Germany. But to see the world's richest man now giving a full worded endorsement of them and saying that, quote, only they can save Germany, it felt like a huge moment when he made that appearance. I think whilst the party faithful may have been very pleased with that, I think for the sort of average person on the street, there was still just an element of being perplexed by all of this. Why was this foreign billionaire getting himself involved in German politics? You know, and when you hit the street and you speak to people, just kind of confusion.
I think it's a disaster for Germany because I think American businessman doesn't have anything to do with the German politics. and I think we have to decide ourselves what's best for our country and not what's best for Elon Musk.
Now, this honeymoon period with Musk in America seems to be coming to an end, though, Kate. Polls suggest support for him and for DOGE appear to be waning. Also, the courts, they've had some success in putting a stop to a few of DOGE's orders. So how far could Musk go with his reach in Washington, do you think?
Well, a lot of what he has been doing is now under legal scrutiny. But part of the problem for those people trying to push back against what he's doing using the courts is that the courts go very slowly. Justice is a slow process, whereas Donald Trump and Elon Musk are so fast in what they're doing. Almost the justice system can't keep up with how fast things are moving. And that is something that he and Donald Trump are using to their advantage. But what eventually the courts decide could determine whether this is just a momentary blip in the kind of the typical way that the US is governed, or whether we are in a full-blown constitutional crisis. That's according to legal experts. It's how robust the justice system is in the face of these challenges from Musk and from Donald Trump. And that is going to be, something we're going to have to wait and see whether it will hold up and whether this will continue unchallenged and whether he will be able to complete everything he's doing or whether there will be legal pushback. But as I say, it just takes so long in this legal system to find out what the answers to that will be. But at the moment, he and Trump are pushing ahead with very little pushback.
Some have called what we're seeing today, Trent, an internet industrial complex where we have the confluence of money, of tech, and political power all coming together to shape our world in a way that we actually can't fully comprehend yet. How much of a threat does Musk's influence over social media platforms worry leaders in Europe, particularly, I'm thinking, when it comes to elections?
Look, I think what a lot of European leaders did over recent weeks was watch the result of the German election and to try and understand what the endorsement meant for the final result. Now, the AfD party doubled its vote share since the last election. It got about 20% of the vote. So they were feeling quite pleased. They're now the second biggest party in German parliament. Now, of course, it's going to take some time, I think, to assess, to analyze what role Musk may have had on that. But there can be little doubt about the reach and the power that he has now. I mean, he effectively owns the world's biggest soapbox with instant translation availability. You only have to click a small button to be able to read tweets and posts in different languages. That's obviously a huge part of how the European Union works. I think many leaders across Europe will be wondering whether he might take a view of their country and their election to try and involve himself and what that means. I mean, it's not just Germany where we're seeing this. The United Kingdom has had its own kind of brush with Elon Musk after some quite high profile back and forth between Downing Street and him. He's attacked the Prime Minister there over issues like law and order and what he calls two-tier policing, effectively saying the police treat people differently based on their race or ethnicity. I mean, this is some quite difficult stuff that he's working on. I think the British are trying to take a sort of an easy approach with that. I think for Keir Starmer, he knows that Musk has the ear of the president and he's not wanting to sort of get involved too much in a back and forth, but it maybe is just a kind of a taster of what we could see more broadly. He certainly has attacked Brussels before, saying there should be more power in individual capitals rather than the European Union. And, I guess it's a cliche, but time is really going to tell whether he's going to continue to sort of shift his focus occasionally across the Atlantic and to try and interfere European Union politics, where it has to be said, regulation is a lot tougher than the United States. We certainly have free speech in the EU. It's an important part, but for many places, there are some limits to that, including any sort of harm that might be done to people. Almost the concept of shouting fire in a crowded theatre. There are some limits, and that may not necessarily align with his libertarian views on free speech.
Kate, we know love can be a fickle thing. How sustainable is this bromance between Elon Musk and President Trump? You talk about his office being in the West Wing right next to Donald Trump's. So when you talk to observers, do they really believe that this billionaire is going to be a fixture in D.C. for the next 4 years?
It's a really interesting question, because I have to say personally, I was thinking, yeah, this is all very interesting, and that they'll have a few photo opportunities. Elon Musk is paying people $1 million to vote for Trump. Eventually, pretty soon, in fact, this is going to peter out. Yet, here we are, and they are still going strong. They seem to be getting on really well. As I mentioned in that cabinet meeting earlier this week, Donald Trump essentially gave the floor to Elon Musk in that cabinet meeting, not something that he would do if he was feeling threatened by him and thinking that he was losing his power and his position as the, head of the country. I have been proved wrong in that so far. And speaking to analysts and experts here, some say that it is short-sighted to think that they will end up falling out, because they both need each other. This is a symbiotic relationship, and it is so positive for both of them in terms of wealth and power, that even if there is some personal friction at some point, the greater advantages for them both will probably outweigh that. And we could see him as a fixture, some are saying, for the full 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency. And me and other people who thought that this would all be over very quickly could be proved wrong. Because if you look at the example of his last term in office, there were several times he sacked cabinet secretaries, he got rid of chiefs of staff that he felt weren't on his wavelength. But the fact is, these two men are at the moment having such positive influence on each other that it's likely that it could continue. The problem for Donald Trump will be is if he does decide he's had enough of Elon Musk, he will be a lot harder to get rid of than these political appointees, because he's richer than Donald Trump and in some ways more powerful, given he owns the social media app X, and he is just so wealthy that he will not be easy to discard if Trump decides that's what he wants to do.
Before we go, Trent, how vocally do you think Musk will share his political views now that the German election is over? How concerned should Europe be that Musk may be meddling in their affairs over the next 4 years?
I think that the track record of Elon Musk suggests he's not going to go away anytime soon. I think for me, the bigger question is what sort of happens with some of his business ventures across the EU. I mean, he continues to maintain that factory in Berlin, but we're starting to see some signs that maybe this is having some pushback at a consumer level. I mean, sales for Tesla across many of the EU markets have fallen considerably since January. Now, some analysts will say that has a bit to do with a new model coming out, but I think there is also a sense that, maybe people may not want to purchase a car from a founder from a company who holds these views and who is interfering in their election systems. But again, I guess the question is, does that bother Musk, or is his focus now shifting elsewhere? Is he happy to kind of absorb some financial losses in order to be able to hold these views and to have the year of the president and to own X? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But if I was a betting man, I would suggest he is not going anywhere, and we will consistently have elections across the 27 members of the EU. And I would imagine he will like to have an opinion on many of them.
Kate, Trent, thank you so much for your insights from both sides of the Atlantic.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa.
And a reminder, you can find Kate's and Trent's reports on YouTube and on CNA.Asia. There are also TV episodes of CNA Correspondent every Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time. I'm Teresa Tang. The team behind this week's episode is Balakrishnan, Saya Win, Clara Ong, Crispina Robert, and Craig Dale. A new episode drops next Wednesday. Join us then. Bye for now.